I should have had that last drink. The night started in the quietest way possible, and maybe that's why I let it slip into something louder, messier, and harder to pull back from. I was in Brimfield, a nowhere town in western Massachusetts. The kind of place where the air smells of wet pine and half the houses creak from old timber. I'd come there on a whim, chasing a weekend away from my overscheduled city life. That's when I stumbled into Lauren Haviland's orbit. Before I go any further, let me break this wall and talk to you, the one listening or watching this. If you've ever had one of those nights where too much alcohol met too much temptation, you know exactly where this is going. And hey, before we dive deeper, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs a little heat in their life, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Trust me, by the time this story finds its rhythm, you'll feel so caught up that missing the chance to subscribe will feel like turning down a kiss you've been waiting years for. Now, back to Brimfield. The tavern was small, with low ceilings and lamps that hummed with yellow glow. Locals drank whiskey like water, and there was a jukebox that hadn't been updated since the 90s. Lauren worked behind the bar, broad-shouldered, with a drawl in his voice that betrayed roots deeper than this dusty town. His name wasn't common. I asked him about it halfway through my second bourbon, and he laughed. My mother wanted something biblical, he said, wiping a glass with a rag. But not so common. I'd have 3 other Laurens in the classroom. Guess she succeeded. His smile lingered when he looked at me, and I felt it, subtle, but heavy enough that it pressed against the inside of my chest. I should have left then, gone back to the rental cabin before the alcohol softened my guard. But Lauren had this way of leaning in when he talked, as if every word was meant only for me. By the time midnight rolled around, we were sitting shoulder to shoulder in the booth near the jukebox, sharing beers and pieces of our lives, as if we'd known each other for years. You don't strike me as a small-town type, he said, studying me in that unhurried way of his. And you don't strike me as the type who stays in one, I countered. He grinned at that, a slow, knowing grin, and the space between us thinned. We drank too much. That's the truth of it. And when his hand brushed against mine, I didn't pull away. Maybe I should have. Maybe the wiser part of me whispered caution. But the heat in his touch, the rough texture of his palm against my skin, made me lean in instead. That was when he took too much liberty. It wasn't crude. It wasn't careless. It was just bold. His arms sliding across my shoulders, his fingers ghosting down my spine as he whispered something I didn't quite catch over the music. My body understood it before my mind could reason it out. The bar around us blurred, and the only thing sharp and clear was Lauren's mouth, close enough that I could taste the hops on his breath. I let it happen. No, that's not the truth. I wanted it to happen. The tavern closed in around us, not from the crowd, but from the way Lauren leaned into me. The low thump of the jukebox melted into the background. Every time his hand lingered against mine, I felt a jolt that no bourbon could mimic. When the bartender announced last call, Lauren stood, stretching his tall frame before glancing down at me. "Come on," he said, his voice softened now, stripped of the banter. "You shouldn't walk back to your cabin alone." I wanted to argue, but the truth was, I didn't want to. The night air had sharpened, the kind of crisp chill that makes you aware of every breath. We stepped outside, boots crunching against gravel, and the silence between us was heavier than any words. "Cold?" he asked. "A little," I admitted, though my skin burned under the memory of his arm around me. Without thinking twice, he draped his flannel over my shoulders. The fabric was still warm from his body, and it carried his scent, smoke, cedar, and something faintly sweet, like honey left too long in the sun. I inhaled, dizzy with it. The walk back should have been 15 minutes. It stretched longer because neither of us hurried. Our shoulders brushed more than once, and each time I felt him pull slightly closer, like gravity had rewritten itself. "You ever do this?" he asked suddenly. "Do what?" "Meet someone by accident and feel like it was supposed to happen." I looked at him then, really looked. The dim streetlight caught the edge of his jaw. the shadow of stubble, the curve of his mouth that had been teasing me all night. "Maybe once," I said, my voice low. His smile deepened, but he didn't press. Instead, he slid his hand into mine, simple as that, and I let him. My pulse roared in my ears, but my body relaxed, like this was exactly what I'd been waiting for without even knowing it. When we reached the cabin, I hesitated on the porch. The wooden boards creaked under our weight, and the night pressed in thick around us. I could have let it end there. I could have told him thank you and slipped inside. But Lauren leaned against the post, hands in his pockets, watching me with eyes that didn't waver. "Wanted to come in?" he asked. It wasn't pushy, just honest. I swallowed hard. The taste of bourbon still lingered on my tongue, but it wasn't the alcohol making me reckless. It was him. "Yes," I said. The word felt like the opening of a door I hadn't dared touch before. Inside, the cabin was dim, the air carrying the faint scent of old wood and pine. I fumbled with the lamp switch, but Lauren stopped me with a hand on my wrist. "Leave it," he murmured. The darkness swallowed us, but his closeness was enough light. And then he kissed me. It wasn't careful this time. It was hungry, the kind of kiss that tasted of too much drink and too much restraint finally breaking. His hands framed my face, rough and sure, and I melted into it, clutching his shirt like it was the only thing keeping me upright. When his lips trailed down to my neck, I gasped, the sound slipping into the shadows. Every nerve in my body snapped awake. His breath was hot against my skin, his fingers firm at my waist, and for a heartbeat, I forgot the world beyond that cabin even existed. He had taken too much liberty back in the bar. But here, I was giving it freely. The first kiss inside the cabin had weight to it, the kind that anchors you even as it pulls you under. Lauren pressed me back against the door, his palms flat on either side of my face, his mouth claiming mine in a way that left no room for doubt. I wasn't drunk anymore. Not really. The bourbon haze had lifted, and what remained was sharper, hungrier. Every nerve in me knew what I wanted, and it wasn't the safety of retreat. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against mine, his breath ragged. "Tell me if it's too much," he said, his voice roughened by restraint. "It's not," I whispered. "Don't stop." That was permission enough. His lips found me again, slower this time, tracing the curve of my jaw before sliding down the hollow of my throat. Each kiss burned, leaving trails of heat that made me arch toward him without thinking. My fingers worked clumsily at the buttons of his shirt, desperate to touch skin. He let out a low laugh against my collarbone. "Impatient, aren't you?" "You have no idea," I murmured, tugging harder. The shirt gave way, and my hand spread across his chest. Warm, firm muscle under rough skin. He felt solid, real, a living flame press against me. He caught my wrists gently, guiding my palms lower, letting me explore him in my own rhythm. Then his hand slid beneath my shirt. The contrast of his calloused fingers against my bare skin made me shiver. He drew the fabric up slowly, teasing, until I lifted my arms and let him pull over my head. The cool air rushed against my heated skin, but Lauren's gaze was hotter still. "God!" he muttered, his eyes roaming me with reverence that was almost unbearable. "You're beautiful." No one had ever said it to me like that before. Not as a line, not as flattery. He meant it, and in that dim cabin, with the night pressing in all around us, I believed him. We moved together toward the bed, each step punctuated by touches that lingered too long and kisses that grew hungrier. When the back of my knees hit the mattress, I let myself fall, pulling him down with me. The world narrowed to the heat of his body above mine. The press of his weight, the way his mouth claimed mine like he'd been holding back for years. My fingers tangled in his hair, urging him closer, closer still, until there was no space left between us. Clothes disappeared in pieces, his shirt tossed aside, my belt unbuckled with shaking hands, the sound of zippers splitting the quiet. Each layer shed was confession, each kiss a vow. By the time we were bare, nothing stood between us but the pounding rhythm of our hearts. Lauren looked down at me then, his face shallow but tender, his thumb brushing against my cheekbone. "I don't want this to be just a night," he whispered. My chest tightened at the weight of it. I cupped his face, pulling him close until our lips brushed. "Then don't let it be." And with that, we let go of restraint. The moment Lauren whispered that he didn't want this to be just a night, something shifted in me. The heat was still there, burning, urgent, but underneath it, a tenderness grew, fragile and undeniable. His weight settled over me, solid and grounding, while his lips claimed mine again with slow, searching intensity. It wasn't the rough kiss of the bar, or the hungry one at the cabin door. This was different. This was deliberate. He was learning me, piece by piece, and I let myself be known. His hands mapped me as though he was memorizing every inch. The curve of my waist, the dip of my hip, the trembling line of my stomach. My body arched under his touch, aching for more, for closeness that left no space between us. When I reached for him, he let me, guiding my hands along his chest, his back, his shoulders. The heat of his skin seared my palms, and the shiver that passed through him told me he was just as undone as I was. "Lauren," I breathed, his name breaking from me like a plea. He kissed me harder, his breath mingling with mine, his hands tightening at my sides. The rhythm of us became desperate, then slowed again, as though he wanted to stretch the moment forever. And then there was nothing left to hold back. The joining of us was heat and hunger, but also something more, a surrender that felt holy in its intimacy. He moved with me, against me, inside me, every thrust a confession, every kiss an answer. My cries filled the cabin, met by his own, a symphony of need that rose and broke like waves against the shore. It was raw, it was consuming, but it was also tender. His hand cradling my face even as he drove me closer to breaking, his lips whispering my name between gasps as if grounding me inside the fire. When release finally came, it was overwhelming. My body shook with it. My voice caught in his shoulder, and he held me through it, his own shudder tearing through him moments later. We collapsed together, tangled in sweat and breathless laughter, the weight of his body pressing me into the mattress in the most grounding way. Silence settled then, broken only by the pounding of our hearts and the soft crackle of the cabin settling in the night. He kissed my temple, his voice low, husky. "I meant it, you know. I don't want this to be just a night." I turned my head, meeting his gaze in the dim light. "Good, because I don't either." He smiled, tired, satisfied, but lit with something deeper. Then he pulled me closer, wrapping himself around me like he was afraid to let go. And as the night carried us into sleep, I knew with startling clarity. It hadn't been the drinks that brought me here. It had been him. Always him.